guys, I'm now just going to continue reading the next extract from our class novel Hamlet. That evening, while the audience watched the stage, I watched Claudius. At first he showed little interest in the story, preferring to whisper to my mother and kiss her fingers in a way that filled me with loathing, but gradually the skill of the players won his attention. At the end of the first scene, exactly according to my instructions, the actor playing Duke Gonzago lay down as though asleep, and his nephew, Lucianus, played by the actor who resembled Claudius, crept up on him and poured poison into his ear. Even though the light in the hall was dim, I could see the deathly pallor of Claudius's face as he watched this scene. His eyes grew troubled, and he raised a trembling hand towards the stage. I knew then what I was gazing at, the face of a murderer, and that everything the ghost had told me was true. "No!" Claudius cried out, springing to his feet. "Lights! Bring more lights!" But all the torches in the world would not light the darkness in his mind. His nerve failed, and he hurried from the hall. Mother made to follow him, but I stopped her at the door. "Do not delay me. I must go to the king," she said. "Something is wrong." "And I know what," I told her. "I must talk to you. I will come to your room in an hour, make sure you are alone, and tell no one of our meeting." But I underestimated Claudius's cunning and the power he had over my mother. When she let me into her room, there was a coldness in her expression, and I guessed that she had been speaking to my uncle. Before I could say a word, she said, "Hamlet, you have deeply offended your royal stepfather." "And you have offended my dead father," I replied. Mother frowned at me, puzzled. "What do you mean?" she demanded. "You offended him the day you abandoned your mourning robes in exchange for a wedding gown," I said. "The day you married a liar and a murderer." "I won't listen," Mother shouted. She began to cover her ears with her hands, and I caught hold of her wrist to prevent her. She had to hear the truth. Mother screamed in alarm, and then I heard a voice from behind the drawn curtains at her window calling out, "Help! Murder!" I was certain it was Claudius. Who else would skulk and spy in my mother's bedroom? I drew my sword and plunged it into the curtain, filled with fierce joy that my father was avenged at last. But it was the body of Lord Polonius that tumbled into the room. I had killed an innocent man. "You meddling old fool," I groaned. "What were you doing there?" "Following my orders," said a voice. I turned and saw Claudius in the doorway, with 2 armed guards. A triumphant light glinted in his eyes. "I was afraid you might harm your mother if you were alone with her," Claudius went on. "Your madness has made you violent, Hamlet. You must leave Denmark tonight. I shall send you to friends in England, who will care for you until you are back in your right mind. Guards, take the prince away." Neither my mother nor the guards saw the mocking smile that flickered on his lips, but as soon as I saw it, I knew that Claudius intended me never to return from England. I would be imprisoned and then secretly murdered. While I had been trying to trap my uncle, he had been setting a trap for me, and now it had snapped shut. They bundled me into a windowless carriage and locked the doors, and I was driven speedily through the night. I could see nothing and could hear only the rattling of the wheels and the cracking of the driver's whip, keeping the horses at full gallop. After several hours, the carriage arrived at a port, and I was placed on a ship that set sail almost as soon as I was aboard. I made no attempts to escape. It was all over. My father was unavenged, Claudius had outwitted me, and I was as good as dead. Just before dawn broke, my life seemed to become some strange dream, for the most unlikely thing happened. I was rescued by Danish pirates. They captured the ship and murdered most of the crew, but when they discovered who I was, panic seized them. Fearing that they would be hunted down by the Danish fleet, the pirates sailed back to Denmark and put me ashore at a little fishing village. There I found lodgings and wrote letters to Horatio and to my mother. I told her that I would return to Elsinore and right all the wrongs that had been done, though I did not tell her what those wrongs were. The next day I brought a horse and set off, certain that fate had returned me to Denmark to complete my revenge. There was no more doubt in my mind. Claudius was guilty, and I would make him answer for his crime. I was still some way from the castle when I was met by Horatio, who had ridden out to find me. There was a darkness in my friend's face, and I knew he was the bearer of ill tidings. "My lord," he said, "the Lady Ophelia is dead. Claudius told her that you had killed her father, and the grief drove her so mad that she drowned herself." Tears blurred my sight. What had I done to my beloved Ophelia? In another time and place, our love might have grown into happiness. Ophelia's brother, Laertes had sworn to kill you for the deaths of his father and sister, Horatio went on, but Claudius persuaded him to settle his differences with you in a fencing match in front of the whole court. I have seen the king whispering to him in private, and I am sure they are plotting against you. Turn back, my lord, escape while you can to somewhere you will be safe. No, I must go to Elsinore, I told him. My destiny awaits me there. We cannot escape our destinies, Horatio. We can only be ready for them, and I am ready. And so the ghost, Claudius, the pirates, and my destiny have brought me back to the torchlight and candles of the great hall at Elsinore. Courtiers and nobles chatter idly and make wagers on the outcome of the duel. There, on the royal thrones, sit my uncle and my mother. She smiles at me and looks proud. He is anxious and keeps glancing slyly at Laertes. Laertes is filled with a cold hatred that makes his eyes shine like moonlight on ice. Horatio takes my cloak and hands me a rapier. His face is pale and worried. He leans close and whispers, "Have a care, my lord. There is death. Look." I smile. Death is everywhere in the castle of Elsinore tonight, and I can feel my father's spirit hovering over me. Claudius raises his right arm. "Let the contest begin," he commands. The blades of ours snick and squeal. Our shadows, made huge and menacing by the torches, flicker on the walls as we duck and dodge. Laertes is a skilled swordsman, but rage and hate have made him clumsy. He drops his guard to strike at me. I flick my wrist and the point of the sword catches his arm. One of the marshals shouts, "A hit! First hit to Prince Hamlet." Laertes bows, his forehead slick with sweat. "Let us take a cup of wine and catch our breath, my lord," he says. The wine cups are on a table near the thrones. Laertes and I step towards them, and my mother suddenly snatches up one of the cups. "A toast to honour my beloved son," she announces. "No," hisses Claudius. He reaches out as if to dash the cup from my mother's lips, but he is too late. She has drunk the wine down to the dregs. There is just time for me to see a look of horror on Claudius's face, and then, without warning, Laertes wheels around and slashes at me with his sword. I parry the blow, realising that there is no longer a contest. I am fighting for my life. I see Laertes' eyes, blind with fury. I watch his mouth twist itself into an ugly snarl. He clutches at me and tries to stab under my arm, but I catch the sword in my left hand and I wrench it from his grasp. A pain like fire burns against my palm, and my fingers are wet with blood. I step back, throw Laertes my sword, and take him in my right hand. "On guard," I say. We fight on, but something is wrong. Laertes looks terrified and his breath comes in sobs. The pain in my hand is fierce, throbbing up into my forearm. I have suffered from sword cuts before, but none as painful as this. Laertes lunges desperately at me, and the point of my sword scratches through his shirt. A spurt of red stains the whiteness of the linen. Laertes reels back. "We are dead men," he groans. "The king spread poison on the blade, the same poison that he poured into your wine cup." I see all now. I understand the hot agony that is creeping through my left arm and across my chest. Laertes cries out, "The king is a murderer," and crumples to the floor. At the same time, my mother screams and topples from her throne. There is no time left. I must act quickly before the pain reaches my heart. I stagger towards Claudius and he cringes in his throne, covering his face with his hands. "Traitor," I say, and drive the poisoned sword deep into his heart. Voices shout, people are running. I fall back and someone catches me. I think it is Horatio, but I cannot see him clearly, for darkness is falling before my eyes, coming down like the snow falling that night on the battlements. Through the darkness I seem to see a light, and my father's face, and everything drops away behind me. Horatio's voice whispers, "Farewell, sweet prince," and the rest is silence.